Good morning. Thank you for joining me on this final day of 2020. What a tumultuous year. The death toll from the national crisis reaches beyond 300,000 souls. The federal government is a house divided. Hatred, racism, and injustice tear at the very fabric of democracy. Fear and anger at the loss of trust, of civility, of common decency spark riots and destruction in the cities. The seeming loss of reason and the loss of the capacity to feel shame or to seek compromise or to defend peacefully the rights of everyone to pursue life, liberty, and happiness. This moral ineptitude reaches from the smallest of municipalities to the highest offices in the land. What a tumultuous year. It was the year 1863. In 1863, our national crisis, our sickness, was of course the Civil War. And in the week between Christmas Eve and New Year's Eve, our nation mourned its 300,000 fatalities and its moral ineptitude and its distrust and incivility and its horrendous and frightening division. In 1863, very likely the most well-known and most beloved American was a poet, the poet Henry Wadsworth Longfellow, author of Paul Revere's Ride, The Courtship of Miles Standish, The Village Blacksmith, The Song of Hiawatha. You know them all. In 1863, Christmas fell on a Friday, as it did for us this year. In the week between Christmas and New Year, like this week, encompassed about by so much death and so much division as we are, Longfellow wandered the streets of Cambridge, Massachusetts, his hometown. Sorrow enshrouded him. He grieved the mounting death toll, the deep national divisiveness, the racial inequities, the incessant political and cultural warring, all of the things that you and I are grieving this week. But Longfellow was also mourning the tragic death of his wife in a house fire barely 18 months earlier. And he was grieving for his son, Charles, a lieutenant in the 1st Massachusetts Infantry, who this week was lying severely wounded from a battle in Orange County, Virginia. Many of you right now, I suspect, are like Longfellow, experiencing some struggle with a burden, some very personal grief this week, this very moment. And you too, like him, are marching through the valley of some shadow, the latest recruits in the army of the heartsick. I am so very sorry for your grief this week. In the last week of the year, 1863, Longfellow wandered the snowy streets of Cambridge alone, accompanied only by the occasional faint Christmas carol, wafting faintly from some distant carillon spire somewhere across town. Returning home, he did what he knew to do. In the worst of times, he attempted the best of things. He sat down and he penned a very personal poem titled Christmas Bells. I want to read a portion of that poem for you. I commend it to you in its entirety. Longfellow wrote, "I heard the bells on Christmas Day, their old familiar carols play, and wild and sweet the words repeat of peace on earth, good will to men. And in despair I bowed my head. There is no peace on earth, I said, for hate is strong and mocks the song of peace on earth, goodwill to men. Then pealed the bells more loud and deep. God is not dead, nor doth he sleep. The wrong shall fail, the right prevail, with peace on earth, goodwill to men." In his poem, Longfellow recounts that he hung his head in despair. He honestly acknowledged the full extent of his sorrow and anger and grief. And in that moment, who can say how? A miracle. The grace of God breathed across the dying embers of his wounded spirit, and hope was rekindled. Hope, that stirring inner resurgence welling up to rejoice a weary soul. Hope, that deep, wild bell ringing defiantly against a darkening sky. Hope, that valiant courage of the resurrection, straining at every moment to come alive at the center of a believer's heart. Hope, the voice of the Eternal One, obstinately as springtime, whispering in our ear, whispering the word hope always says, maybe that what is at present is not everything that ever shall be. Hope. In this world, Jesus said, in this world you will have tribulation, but take heart. I have overcome the world. Hope on. Jesus, the suffering one, bids us in our suffering to hope on. In our grief and anger and frustration and sadness, all of the emotions this passing year has drawn out of us, Jesus says, in your struggles, I see you. Hope on. So no white flags for us, no surrender. For we have as a companion none other than the hope of the world, Jesus, the compassionate Christ. Jesus calls us to lift up our despairing heads, to look up, to listen up to the ringing promise from the Prince of Peace himself. I am with you always to the end of time. Hope on. Then pealed the bells more loud and deep. God is not dead, nor doth he sleep. The wrong shall fail, the right prevail. God gives us a brand new year in which to become more fully his. 2021. Let's do this.